Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships, and today we're looking at Zarya S. This is a new, mostly, battleship for the Surcouf Salvage event. This one you can get as the third ship as you progress up towards the Surcouf. This is a Tier 9 Soviet battleship that can sometimes give you some pretty insane damage. Obviously, it's also extremely tanky. Zarya S is essentially a Vladivostok up-tiered to Tier 9 with some improvements. This ship is going to be very expensive, but first we got to go over some of the strengths here, and that is the best clips that I could get with this ship. To be honest with you, it was a bit temperamental, but I got to show you that it can do some very good damage. I'm not a huge fan of this ship, but we do have to keep things in perspective. It's still a solid battleship if you get it in the right situation. So pretty nice salvos there. That Colombo one might have been the most damage I've ever seen out of dispersion that bad. Monty takes a big hit. Congress, below water, Citadel, we still get it there. We're tanking over 4 million potential damage. This one was a super ship game, actually. There was Hanovers and Satsumas here. I should not have turned out. It's a very vulnerable broadside here. Very vulnerable Citadel. But I was worried about getting rushed by the Vampire 2 and the Rune. So I tried to make something happen. It did not work. But over 4 mil potential damage. Most of my games actually were easily above 2 million, very comfortably at 3 million potential damage. It's a very tanky ship with guns that can work at these closer ranges. Soviet dispersion curve means that outside of 12 to 15 kilometers, it's worse dispersion than the standard battleships like Montana Line, for example. But inside that range, it gets better. And sub 10 kilometers, it can approach battlecruiser dispersion, like 5 kilometers or so. It gets very, very good. So you should notice that as we get closer in these battles, my dispersion tends to look a lot better. That is not an RNG thing. That is just how Soviet battleships have been designed. You need to get close with these if you want to actually reliably hit anything, for the most part. These are going to be 406s here, much like Vladivostok. They're slightly improved main guns, a little bit the alpha damage here. We also get much better reload, allowing us to maybe collect a salvo here and there. And again, it's a very, very tanky ship. This is a 30-second action time on this damage control, by the way. So you can afford to sit under HE spam and actually just not get relit on a fire for an incredibly long time. But it can also have salvos like this at these good ranges. 11 kilometers away from Stalingrad. Excuse me, what is that? We're at better than battleship dispersion table here at 10 kilometers. 14 kilometers, it's right around normal battleship dispersion, and most of my games were somewhere in between. Your salvos shouldn't look this bad. Oh my goodness, what was that? They shouldn't be that bad, but they were not at all consistent like the first few clips of this video. It's somewhere in between, right? It's still a battleship. We need to be getting close. But look at the concealment, 12.1 detect. That is a major advantage of Zarya S. Having a Soviet battleship with its incredible armor, which is better than Vladi armor. It's not just a copied ship up-tiered, which model-wise it is, of course, but the armor profile has been improved. We do have 50 mil deck armor as well as much thicker Citadel belt armor. So even though we do have to go broadside a little bit more than we'd like to fire all of our guns, it is a better armor. It's a little over 400 millimeters of Citadel protection on our side, which is above water. So if you do go broadside, you're going to get smashed most of the time. But it's a little better than Vladi in that regard. We should talk about the price, though, now as we get into a few of our full games. This ship is not cheap. 720,000 coal. We went over this with the Nari video. This is the third ship along the progression towards the Surcouf in that salvage event. So for 45 stages, what you got to complete, that is 720,000 coal. Another 336,000 coal on top of what you paid already to get to Nari. Very, very expensive here. And essentially being an up-tiered Vladivostok for 720,000 coal, I think that's an easy pass, guys. Really easy to pass on this one. If you want Nari, that could be worth the 384,000. But like I said, with the Kelowna, that's going to be my huge recommendation for you. If you're still interested in these Soviet battleships, just go play Soyuz, okay? Let's start the comparisons, okay? Because it's not going to be too favorable for poor Zarya S here. First, the comparison to Vladdy and how worthwhile it is to get an up-tiered version. As mentioned, the armor is a little bit better, which is nice. The concealment being very good on Zarya S, it's also pretty good on Vladdy. You get down to around 12.5 kilometers there, so 0.4 kilometer difference. It helps, but it's not that huge of a deal. As for the HP pools, yeah, they are going to be exactly the same. If you're looking for the acceleration, that is going to be the same as well. So taking prop mod is very good on these Soviet battleships to do some speed juking, very small superstructures. That's all going to be the same here. Same speed. The rudder shift, though, is actually quite a bit worse. 17.1 second rudder with a 950 meter turning circle radius, which is the Vladdy turning circle radius. But that rudder shift is a big deal. This ship feels quite sluggish, so you might be a little more vulnerable to eating torps, or if you do get caught broadside, you're not going to be able to adjust nearly as easily. Speaking of torps, though, it's got a gigantic torp protection bonus. 46% torp protection is incredible on these Soviet battleships that want to push in, want to get closer, but they don't have a hydro, right? The Vladdy has a 21% torp protection. Not very good. So much improved there. As for the main guns, it is a simple 0.1 sigma buff over Vladdy. It's the same dispersion otherwise, and you do also get 0.9 kilometers more range, but still 19 kilometers, 18.9. 19 kilometers of range at tier 9 is fine. Into these down tiers, it certainly works very well, but as you get up tiered, that can hurt a little bit. The base reload goes down to 31 seconds instead of 33 seconds, so 2-second buff there. Remember, at tier 9, you also get access to the 6th upgrade slot where we can take reload mod, so it is a much more impactful reload difference going from tier 8 to tier 9, but that's less down to what they changed on Zarya S over Vladdy and more just you're at tier 9 now, so you get those bonuses. It's the 0.1 sigma buff that I really did notice. Remember though, when taking that reload mod, you get a penalty tier turret traverse. So even though the turret traverse is both 45 seconds on Vladdy and Zarya, well, it goes to well above 50-second turret traverse when taking reload mod. The AP shells here have been changed just a little bit, so we do actually get better alpha damage on these 13,500 instead of 13,100. Again, small differences, but hey, it makes some difference. Maybe we get a 20k salvo on Iparanga, where in Vladdy it says 19k. It's small, but maybe it is worth taking there. Our pen is also improved at 15 kilometers. It's 583 millimeters instead of 512. Something like that can be the difference of playing in higher tier, allowing you to maybe get some citadels on those Musashis that I was finding broadside, for example. It is quite useful. The HE shells, on the other hand, have not been changed at all. I really wasn't using these, to be honest with you, so would not really recommend you spam HE out of your Soviet battleships. You want to be pushing, finding those broadsides, applying pressure, that kind of thing. It's very good in these bow-on positions. You notice how little damage we've been taking throughout this battle? Most of my games are like that, where if you sit bow in, you really just don't take all that much damage. As for the secondaries, please don't take the secondaries. The hitting DPM is like 19,000 at 10 kilometers. Really, really not worth using. Here we also do have a defensive fire, which is a bonus over Vladdy, but the AA is so bad that it really doesn't help you that much. Percentage bonuses on very small numbers isn't really actually going to help you that much. But maybe the red flak bursts are going to prevent a carrier from going after you. Maybe they think you'll have good AA, when in actuality, you really don't. As for those consumables, that is the other major change here. We do get that nice 20-second base action time on our damage control, which then with some of the commander skills and modules we can take, I got that up to 30 seconds. 30 seconds of immunity from fires is absolutely hilarious to use with the same short cooldown. It's fun. It's a really interesting consumable. Not worth paying 720,000 coal for, of course, but it is a really interesting gimmick on this ship. So going up a tier from Vladdy, is it worth it? Well, it's tough, man. I mean, 0.1 Sigma can be the difference between that poor Wichita dealing with our overmatch and maybe our shells all missing. You know me, I'm a big stickler for dispersion and consistency there, and 0.1 Sigma, it's nothing to joke about. That is enough for some extra consistency. Perhaps not all the time, but I will gladly take it. I would much prefer to play something that is going to be, on average, more consistent. I also do think that this extra concealment here is very, very valuable. Allows you to go dark sooner, taking advantage of that extra long duration on the damage control. It's where you don't have to deal with the fire detection bloom, right? That is really, really nice. The extra torp protection going to come in handy here, where we got to deal with a Benham in our cap. I'm caught between going broadside to a Tennessee, which, reminder, has cruiser dispersion. Don't want to mess with that too much, so we got to stay angled. And eating all of these Venom torps. Bit of a bad spot to be in, but our acceleration will help us alongside that torp protection. Could be nice to have those extras at tier 9. However, we're comparing to a tier 8. Of course, it's going to be better than the Vladdy. It better be, since it's a tier higher and you're spending an insane amount of coal on it. What about the Sovetsky Soyuz? Ah, yes, this is the problem. So first off, Soyuz only gets 13.1 kilometer detect at its best. Whole kilometer worse. That can be the difference between getting within this Soviet dispersion curve being better and staying outside that range. Sometimes that is enough to make a difference there. The dispersion is the exact same. Soyuz actually has that 1.7 sigma that we get on Zarya S, where Vladdy is at that 1.6. Crucially, it has better turret traverse. So yeah, you're taking reload mod and you have that penalty to your turret traverse, but the base turret traverse on Soyuz is 30 seconds instead of 45. So it's not nearly as bad. I nearly threw this game, by the way. We do dev strike the Benham, unfortunately. Like I said, at close range, Soviet dispersion table is very accurate. I nearly threw that, though, because of the turret traverse. There was no need for me to greed for that, by the way. I could have just shot front guns, ate the 2 torps on the bow, and I would have been fine. Okay, that's what I should have done. I was just eyeing a 6-kill game and a dev strike, potentially. Don't do that. Don't do that. That was a mistake. But it happened to work out, okay? But turret traverse is a big deal. So Soyuz having that 30-second base is very nice. Soyuz, though, has a 33-second reload, so 2 seconds longer than Zarya S. So the DPM there is a little bit worse. However, the armor is better on the Soyuz. Maybe not in its belt armor. Absolute citadel protection is better on Zarya S. But you should be angling these ships. You really shouldn't be getting caught broadside. You should be just slow pushing bow in like I'm going to do in this game here. You just play around your concealment range away from the enemies, bow on, and you just slowly push them back. That's kind of the standard Soviet playstyle. And Soyuz is going to do a better job of that, even though it does lack a little bit on that reload. The AP shells are a little bit lower damage, but only like 250 alpha damage less. Actually, similar pen, a little bit worse again than Zarya, but so minor a difference that I would rather take Soyuz, because Soyuz main guns have 30-degree firing angles forward. Like I said, we're playing bow in a lot of the time, slowly pushing into things. 30-degree forward angles are extremely valuable, where Zarya S has to deal with the Vladdy 35-degree forward firing angles. So if you're firing all of your guns in Zarya at these closer ranges, well, you're a little more vulnerable to eating some citadel salvos through just under your turrets. It's a really common spot to aim. I always do this at closer ranges. And that 30-degree angle is kind of this mythical point of where auto bounce starts to guarantee. At 35 degrees, you're not guaranteeing that. So a big downside there on Zarya. That's one of the reasons that Lenin, if you remember that, the premium Soviet battleship at tier 8, was oftentimes tankier than Vladdy. It's the firing angles that Lenin had, even though it has less HP overall. We also don't have any special secondaries on the tier 9. The HE isn't all that great either. The AA, also not amazing, to be honest with you. And the consumables are just standard. No defensive AA, just the normal 10-second action time on the damage control, not the 20 that we can boost to 30, for example. And the heals are the same. But remember, Soyuz gets a whole ton more HP. We get up to 88,000 base HP, where Zarya is at 73,500. So that's a big difference, like 15k plus HP. That goes a long way in these higher tier battles. So unfortunately for Zarya S, it is very close to a Soyuz. Some minor tweaks in the concealment versus the reload versus the HP. Those are the major differences there. And I guess we do have this fun damage control consumable. But very minor differences from the tech tree ships that make it 720,000 coal for basically the same experience as playing the tech tree tier 9 and the tech tree tier 8. I mean, you're still going to get trolley salvos, right? It's not like this is 1.8 Sigma or something like that to make up for being a tier 8 hull, essentially, at tier 9, right? You'd get better dispersion, better reload at the cost of HP, and those better firing angles too. That might have made a little more sense to me. Zarya S isn't by no means a bad ship. I had some solid games. It's still a battleship at tier 9 that just lives forever. I think that was my main takeaway, was that, wow, this ship really just doesn't die. But my actual impact on the game relied a lot more on my teammates then, because not every salvo is going to look like this one into the Iparanga at closer ranges. It was much more temperamental, okay? And that got a little frustrating to me when I was tanking so much damage and I couldn't deal the consistent damage in return. Now, it needs that balancing factor because it is so tanky. We've only used one heal in this battle and we're over 1.3 million potential damage here, still on 61k HP, right? The ship just does not take damage. So a very interesting tank in that regard, but still, I think the tech tree ones are just going to be better, especially that extra HP is extremely valuable on the Soyuz. So now that we're back in port, I've got to show you guys the build I was running. Of course, we want to go full tank as much as we can, as that is the strength of this ship. And there's not a lot of ways we can buff our battleships outside of that. The very standard build here, I mean, getting an extra heal is sometimes worth it. Still the long cooldown, the 80-second cooldown base, but 2 million potential damage, pretty easy in a ship like this one. You could alternatively go for no conceal, because 12.1 is still great. You can get around 13 something detect without this concealment upgrade. Maybe go furious, maybe drop improved repair party readiness and go for super heavy AP. I was actually running that one for a bit too, trying to get a little bit more damage out of some of these games as well. Like I said, tank, tank, tank. I was tanking so much damage, but I wasn't dealing as much in return, so I wanted to try and get some of the more alpha damage out there. Here is our turret traverse, by the way, 43.1 second turret traverse with the grease the gears upgrade. That's tough, okay? That's kind of tough. And if I wanted to run something like AA defense and ASW expert, buff our AA, and crucially get that 40-second cooldown, which I was running for quite a few of those games as well, goes above 50-second turret traverse suddenly. Very, very challenging to make use of that. 77,000 HP here versus the over 90k HP that we would find on Soyuz. That is certainly a downside as well. Here is the armor layout. See 50 mil deck armor, 50 mil upper belt. Vladdy at tier 8 gets 40 and 40. That is the major difference, as well as 370 on the Citadel. Zarya S gets up to 406. Nice benefit there. Soyuz, on the other hand, gets only 375 in the middle section here. There's like a small 20 mil plate behind this, so really not worth talking about too much, but pretty similar Citadel protection, a little worse maybe on Soyuz, but it gets 60 millimeters of deck armor and upper belt armor. That's a big deal. There's quite a few ships that cross the 50 millimeter threshold for HE shell pen, but not 60, and that is a key strength here of Soyuz. But it's got a bigger superstructure. It's pretty funny to take a look at the Zarya S and Vladdy bow on like this. I mean, what do you do, right? Like, if you don't pen 32, like, good luck dealing damage to this thing bow on. Such a small superstructure, which again, you just live forever. You live forever in these things, which is cool in its own way. But Soyuz does that as well. I've given this ship a fair shot, I think. I've done my absolute best. I had a pretty difficult time trying to find a game I was especially happy with while playing Zarya. I got clips which I threw at the beginning, some salvos that were working, and then the rest of the game was just a shotgun or something like that. It just wasn't working how I wanted it to. So a little bit inconsistent there, as well as I'm sure the price has already thrown you guys off. Just me saying an up-tiered Vladdy with slight tweaks, pretty minor tweaks to be honest, if we're being honest, for 720,000 coal. Yeah, that's not very exciting to me either, unfortunately. Here's the equipment I was running. Probably should have mentioned that as well, but of course, going reload, conceal. I like prop mod a lot with these damage controls, especially the longer duration now. We don't really worry about fires that much, right? So running prop, really useful for low speed juking kind of tactics. Of course, go aiming systems, and then yeah, if you can, damage control party mod 1 is pretty hilarious. So that's about going to do it for this Surcouf Salvage ships that I'm going to take a look at. Kelowna, the obvious choice here. The obvious choice. This one, is still expensive, nearly 200,000 coal, but this feels quite reasonable to me and well worthwhile if you like brawling battleships at all. Tier 8, very fun tier for this as well. Didn't mention it too much, but tier 9 matchmaker, getting those super ship up tiers, that's pretty painful. Tier 8 into tier 10 still hurts, but some of those super ships are absolutely crazy. And then Nari for 384,000 coal. To me, that jump doesn't seem worth it. Nari being, if I'm being honest with you, just a worse Tiger 59, which is not a ship that I'm interested in at all. I don't think that one is very good either. Doesn't make sense to then jump to Zarya S, okay? That would be my take on it. Let me know in the comments down below what you think about Zarya S, as well as the rest of this Surcouf Salvage event. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.